Commander Vexith of the Craner Dominion had seen many terrible things in his 17 cycles of military service. He had witnessed planetary bombardments, watched entire fleets vaporize in the cold vacuum of space, and once, during a particularly bad shore leave, seen a Glorthan try to eat fermented shishin paste. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for the sight currently displayed on his tactical screen. Say that again, Lieutenant? Vexith's mandibles clicked nervously. He was certain, absolutely certain, he had misheard. Lieutenant Prax, a young officer whose spots hadn't even fully developed yet, swallowed hard. His throat sac inflated and deflated 3 times before he could speak. Sir, the humans. They have taken our offspring. All of them. 742 younglings, removed from the nursery station at Sector 9. But sir, the transmission we intercepted, it says they are reading them bedtime stories right now. Vexith's primary eyes narrowed while his secondary eyes widened, an expression that usually made subordinates very uncomfortable. Lieutenant Prax, are you telling me that in the middle of the largest military conflict this quadrant has seen in 200 years, the humans have kidnapped our children and are currently, tucking them into bed? With warm milk, sir. Synthesized to match our exact nutritional requirements. Prax pulled up another screen. And they appear to have built them a playground. A rather impressive one, actually. It has 7 different climbing structures and something called a bouncy castle. The commander sat down, which was difficult considering his species didn't really have chairs designed for their physiology. He made it work anyway, mostly by collapsing onto his command couch in what might have been interpreted as defeat. Open a channel to Admiral Korthax of the Zelkrin Coalition. Sir, the Zelkrin are our enemies. We are literally at war with them right now. Yes, thank you for that tactical assessment, Lieutenant. I am aware we have been trying to blow them up for the past 6 months. Open the channel anyway. Vexith rubbed his eye stalks, feeling the beginning of what humans would call a migraine, though his people called it a cranial disruption event. The screen flickered to life, revealing Admiral Korthax, whose facial tentacles were doing that thing they did when she was particularly agitated. Behind her, Vexith could see officers running around in barely controlled panic. Interesting. Vexith, you 4-eyed bottom feeder, I suppose you called to gloat? Hardly, Korthax. Tell me, have your offspring gone missing recently? Perhaps from your colony ship near the Andromeda Relay? The Admiral's tentacles stopped moving entirely, which was never a good sign. In Zelkrin body language, that meant either complete calm or absolute terror. Given the context, Vexith was betting on the latter. How did you know about that? Because mine are also gone. Taken by humans. Who are apparently, and I need you to understand how insane this sounds, throwing them a birthday party. Multiple birthday parties, actually, since they took children from both our species. Vexith pulled up his own tactical display, sharing it with the Zelkrin vessel. Look at this footage we intercepted. The image showed a human facility, hastily constructed but surprisingly well designed. Crana younglings, with their distinctive purple fur and 4 arms, were playing some sort of game with Zelkrin children, who floated above the ground using their natural anti-gravity bladders. And supervising this interspecies playdate were humans, dozens of them, wearing matching shirts that said Galaxy's best babysitters in 17 different languages. 1 human, a tall female with dark skin and hair pulled back in what humans called a ponytail, was apparently settling a dispute between a Craner child and a Zelkrin child over a toy. She bent down, listening carefully to both younglings, then pulled out a second identical toy from seemingly nowhere. Both children seemed satisfied with this solution and ran off together to play. By the great voids, Korthax whispered. Is that human seriously mediating a conflict between our offspring better than our own diplomats have managed in 6 months of war? It appears so, Vexith admitted. And look there, in the corner. Is that your defense minister's daughter? The one you told me, and I quote, was safely behind 3 layers of military protection? The tentacles started moving again, this time in an agitated spiral. Yes. That is definitely Xylith. She is wearing what appears to be a crown made of flowers. Why is she wearing a crown made of flowers, Vexith? I imagine for the same reason my nephew is wearing a cape made of blankets and calling himself Captain Whiskers. The humans seem to be letting them play dress up. Vexith zoomed in on another part of the facility. And is that your son, the one who is supposed to be studying at the military academy? Korthax made a sound like air escaping from a punctured hull. Vexil. He is supposed to be learning advanced combat tactics. Instead, what is he doing? Building a fort out of cushions, I believe. With 3 Craner children and what looks like a human juvenile. They appear to be defending it against an invasion of stuffed animals being thrown by another human adult. For several long moments, both military commanders simply stared at the screen, watching their respective offspring having what could only be described as the time of their lives. A human male, stocky with red hair and a beard, was pushing younglings on swings, carefully adjusting the height and speed for each species' different physiology. Another human, younger and wearing glasses, was conducting what appeared to be a science experiment involving colored liquids and bubbles, surrounded by fascinated children from both species. Vexith, Korthax said slowly, her tentacles forming a pattern that indicated deep thought mixed with confusion. Why did we start this war again? The commander pulled up the official declaration, scrolling through pages of diplomatic language and territorial disputes. Something about mining rights in the Quelix system. And trade route access. Also, I believe your predecessor called our High Council leader an egg-sucking parasite during a diplomatic function. To be fair, he did eat all the appetizers before anyone else got any. My predecessor may have been slightly drunk on fermented Noxian juice, but she had a point. Korthax paused. But none of that seems particularly important right now, does it? No, Vexith agreed. Particularly since the humans have apparently decided to solve our conflict by holding our children hostage via the power of excellent childcare. A new transmission interrupted their conversation. The split screen now showed a third participant, a human female who appeared to be in her middle years, with gray-streaked hair and an expression that somehow conveyed both absolute authority and infinite patience. She was, Vexith realized, wearing an apron that had suspicious stains on it, likely from feeding multiple species with different dietary requirements. Good afternoon, Commander Vexith, Admiral Korthax. My name is Margaret Torres, and I run the Galactic Childcare Initiative. I believe we have something you want. You kidnapped our children. Korthax's tentacles whipped around furiously. Kidnapped is such an ugly word. We prefer emergency protective custody. Margaret smiled, and it was the kind of smile that grandmothers gave when they were about to explain exactly why you were wrong and they were right. You see, 6 months ago, we noticed something troubling. 2 advanced civilizations, both members of the galactic community, both signatories of the Sapient Rights Charter, decided to start shooting at each other. This would be bad enough, except both of you kept your nursery colonies and youth facilities dangerously close to active combat zones. Vexith felt his spots flush a darker purple, which was unfortunate because it meant he was visibly embarrassed. The nursery station was in a secure location. 3 light-years from an active battle zone where you fired weapons capable of cracking planets. Do you know what would have happened if one of those shots had missed? If your targeting systems had glitched? If someone had simply made a mathematical error? Margaret's expression hardened. We do. We ran the simulations. Over 3,000 younglings would have died. So we took them. All of them. From both sides. That is an act of war, Korthax stated, though her tentacles had stopped their aggressive movement. Really? Margaret raised an eyebrow, an expression Vexith had learned was the human equivalent of challenging someone to a duel with words. You are going to declare war on the species that is currently making sure your children are fed, educated, entertained, and safe? The species that just spent the last 6 months building facilities to care for over 3,000 younglings from 2 different biological families? Go ahead. We will wait. Silence filled the channel. In the background, Vexith could hear children laughing, a sound that transcended species and language. His nephew's distinctive giggle was clearly audible, mixed with what had to be Zelkran hatchlings' chittering sounds of joy. What do you want? Vexith asked quietly. Margaret's expression softened slightly. We want you to stop shooting at each other long enough to remember why civilized species do not solve problems with violence. We want you to sit down, actually negotiate, and maybe consider that the next generation, the ones currently playing together without any concern for your stupid territorial disputes, deserve better than parents who cannot figure out how to share a star system. You cannot hold them forever, Korthax pointed out. True. But we can hold them until you 2 idiots, and I use that term with the utmost diplomatic courtesy, agree to stop trying to kill each other. Margaret pulled up a screen of her own, showing a calendar. We have supplies for approximately 2 years. Full educational curriculum for both species, medical care, recreational facilities, and enough humans to supervise at a ratio of 1 adult to every 10 children. We have even hired Craner and Zelkran civilians as cultural consultants to make sure we respect your traditions. This is extortion, Vexith said. No, Commander, this is babysitting. Extortion would involve us teaching them our curse words and sending them back. Margaret grinned. Although I will admit, watching a Craner youngling try to pronounce certain human phrases is absolutely adorable. Would you like to see a video of your nephew attempting to say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious? It took him 47 tries, but he got there eventually. Despite everything, despite the insanity of the situation and the complete upending of military protocol, Vexith found himself wanting to see that video very much. 3 weeks after what historians would later call the Great Babysitting Incident, Commander Vexith found himself doing something he never thought possible. He was sitting in a negotiation room, not with weapons, not with battle plans, but with a cup of what humans called coffee and a growing sense that his entire military career had been leading to this moment of profound absurdity. Across the table, Admiral Korthax was experiencing a similar crisis of professional identity. Her tentacles kept reaching for her weapon holster, only to remember that Margaret Torres had very politely, but very firmly, confiscated all weapons before allowing them into the facility. Something about not wanting to set a bad example for the children. Gentlemen, ladies, and honored tentacled beings, Margaret began, standing at the head of the table with the authority of someone who had refereed food fights between species that could breathe fire. We are here today because your children have made more progress in 3 weeks than your diplomats managed in 6 months. Would you like to know why? Enlighten us, Vexith said, trying not to sound as tired as he felt. He had not slept properly since discovering his nephew was learning Earth songs and apparently excelling at something called hopscotch. Margaret activated a holographic display. It showed the playground, but this time with annotations and data streams. Your younglings do not care about mining rights. They care about who gets the swing first. They do not care about trade routes. They care about whether the snacks are distributed fairly. And when conflicts arise, which they do approximately 17 times per standard hour, they resolve them through communication, compromise, and occasionally rock paper scissors, though we are still teaching the Zelkran hatchlings that particular game. What is rock paper scissors? Korthax asked, her linguistic implant clearly struggling with the translation. A human conflict resolution method based on hand gestures and random chants. Surprisingly effective for minor disputes. Margaret pulled up another screen. But here is what I want you to see. This video was recorded yesterday. The hologram shifted, showing a Craner child. Vexith recognized him as someone from the military district, struggling to reach a toy on a high shelf. The child jumped several times, his forearms waving, but could not quite grasp it. Then, floating into frame, came a Zelkran youngling, using her anti-gravity bladders to rise up, grab the toy, and hand it down to her Craner companion. The two children then ran off together to play with it, the Craner child carrying the toy while the Zelkran child floated alongside. Do you see what happened there? Margaret asked. No negotiation. No territorial dispute. No diplomatic protocol. Just two children from supposedly enemy species helping each other because that is what children do when adults have not yet taught them to hate. Vexith felt something uncomfortable in his chest cavity, an emotion his people called profound shame mixed with the realization you have been a complete fool. The human language had a simpler term for it, but his translator was being diplomatic. Now, Margaret continued, let me show you what your offspring have accomplished in 3 weeks. The Craner children have taught the Zelkran younglings 17 traditional songs from your culture, Commander. The Zelkran hatchlings have shared their floating games, which the Craner children have adapted using climbing structures. They have created 6 new games that combine elements from both cultures. They have formed friendships that cross every line your governments have drawn. And yesterday, they put on a talent show that made 3 of my staff members cry, myself included. A human male, younger than Margaret with kind eyes and wearing one of those babysitter shirts, stepped forward. His name tag read Marcus. He had what appeared to be marker drawings on his arms, clearly done by enthusiastic children. I have been working with mixed species groups for 5 years now, and I have never seen integration this smooth. You know why? Because kids are not born with prejudice. They learn it from adults. Your kids. They just see other kids. Potential friends. Playmates. Study partners. We have also noticed something else, added another human, a woman named Keisha with curly hair and a tired but satisfied expression. The Craner children were fascinated by Zelkran biology, specifically the anti-gravity bladders. So we brought in a Zelkran biologist, a civilian, to explain how they work. The Craner younglings asked such intelligent questions that the biologist has requested permission to develop a youth education program. Similarly, the Zelkran hatchlings were amazed by Craner strength and dexterity with 4 arms. We had a Craner engineer come in, and now we have 12 Zelkran children who want to study mechanical engineering. Admiral Korthax's tentacles had gone completely still again, but this time Vexith recognized it as the stillness of deep thought rather than fear. You are telling us that our children are conducting better cultural exchange than our diplomatic corps? Your children are conducting the only successful cultural exchange, Marcus corrected gently. Your diplomatic corps spent 6 months arguing about 17 different treaty provisions. Your kids spent 3 weeks figuring out how to play tag in 3 dimensions, which is honestly way more impressive from a physics standpoint. Margaret pulled up a final screen, this one showing a list of requests. Here is what your younglings have asked for in the past week. More story time, which we provide daily. More science experiments, we have a full curriculum ready. More art supplies, delivered yesterday. And here is the interesting one. They want to know when they can invite each other to visit their home planets. They want pen pals. They want to continue their friendships after this situation is resolved. Vexith stared at the list, his mind processing the implications. Our children want ongoing contact with each other? Your children want what every child wants. Friends, learning, play, and a future that is not defined by their parents' mistakes. Margaret sat down, her expression shifting from authoritative to something softer, more personal. Commanders, I have been doing this job for 23 years. I have worked with 47 different species. And I can tell you, with absolute certainty, that children are the best diplomats in the galaxy. They have not yet learned that cooperation is supposed to be difficult. They just do it naturally. The room fell silent except for the distant sounds of children playing. Vexith could hear his nephew's voice, shouting something about being the captain of a spaceship. Mixed in was definitely a Zelkran accent, probably one of Korthax's relatives, arguing about navigation protocols. They were playing together, creating a shared story, building a shared experience. What do we do now? Korthax asked, her tentacles forming a pattern that indicated genuine curiosity mixed with reluctance to admit defeat. You negotiate. Actually negotiate. Not the performance you put on for cameras and political bases. Real negotiation. Margaret stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the play area. The Quelix system has 17 planets and 42 moons. Your dispute is over mining rights to 3 asteroids and trade route access through 2 space lanes. Gentlemen, lady, honored beings, there is enough space in that system for both of you. Your children figured out how to share 7 swings and 3 slides. I think your governments can manage to share an entire star system. Marcus pulled up a holographic map of the disputed region. We took the liberty of consulting with some civilian experts, economists, and resource analysts from neutral species. Here is what they proposed. The 3 disputed asteroids contain different mineral concentrations. Asteroid A is rich in Varaxian crystals, which Ukrainer use for your computational systems. Asteroid B has high concentrations of Pilium, which the Zelkran need for their gravitational technology. Asteroid C has both, but in lower quantities. So the solution is obvious, Keisha continued. Krainer get priority mining rights to Asteroid A, Zelkran get Asteroid B, and you establish a joint operation on Asteroid C with profits split 60-40, with the larger percentage rotating annually. As for trade routes, you establish a shared patrol system. Both species benefit from safe passage, both contribute to security, and neither has exclusive control that could be weaponized. Vexith looked at Korthax. Korthax looked at Vexith. Both of them looked at the humans who had just solved a 6-month military conflict with what appeared to be basic math and common sense. Why did our negotiators not propose this? Vexith asked slowly. Because your negotiators were more interested in winning than solving the problem, Margaret said bluntly. Winning meant total control. But total control was never actually possible without enormous loss of life and resources. So instead, you both spent 6 months destroying ships, spending credits, and risking the lives of millions. Including, almost, your children. The weight of that statement settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Vexith thought about his nephew, laughing and playing, completely unaware of how close he had come to being vaporized by a stray weapons blast. The thought made his stomach turn. If we agree to these terms, Korthax said carefully, when do we get our children back? Margaret smiled, but it was not her grandmother's smile. This was her negotiator smile, and Vexith was learning to recognize the difference. When you sign a treaty. A real one, with actual enforcement mechanisms and mutual benefits. When you establish diplomatic relations that do not involve pointing guns at each other. And when you agree to fund an ongoing cultural exchange program so that these friendships your children have built can continue. You want us to pay for our children to continue fraternizing with the enemy? Vexith felt his spots darken again. I want you to invest in a future where they are not enemies at all, Margaret corrected. Commander, Admiral, let me be very clear. Your offspring have given you a gift. They have shown you that cooperation between your species is not just possible, it is natural and beneficial. What you do with that gift is up to you. But if you choose to reject it, if you choose to go back to shooting at each other, then frankly, you do not deserve to get them back. The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Vexith exchanged a long look with Korthax, conducting an entire conversation through facial expressions and body language. Finally, the Admiral spoke. I will need to contact my government. This kind of agreement requires authorization from the High Command. As will I, Vexith admitted. But I will recommend they accept these terms. Excellent. Margaret pulled out actual physical papers, which seemed charmingly old-fashioned. We have prepared preliminary documents. Look them over. Consult your governments. And while you do that, perhaps you would like to visit your children. They have been asking about you. We have told them you were busy with work, which is technically true, though we left out the part about the work involving trying to kill each other. 20 minutes later, Vexith stood in the doorway of the common area, watching his nephew build an elaborate tower with blocks alongside 3 Zelkran hatchlings. The design was remarkable, combining Craner architectural principles with Zelkran aesthetic sensibilities. It was, objectively, more beautiful than anything either species would have created alone. Uncle Vex. His nephew spotted him and came running, all 4 arms extended for a hug. Look what we made. Tessa and Blip and Coral helped me. We are building the biggest tower ever. Want to help? Vexith knelt down, accepting the hug from his nephew, feeling the simple joy radiating from the child. Behind him, he heard Korthax having a similar reunion with her offspring. And in that moment, surrounded by children who had already solved the problem adults could not, Commander Vexith made a decision: the war was over. It had to be. Because if these children could build towers together, their parents could certainly figure out how to share a star system. Margaret Torres watched from her office window, sipping her coffee, allowing herself a small satisfied smile. Another conflict resolved, another group of children saved from their parents' stupidity. In her desk drawer was a file labeled potential hostage situations, childcare opportunities. It was, regrettably, not empty, but that was a problem for another day. Today, the younglings were safe, the adults were negotiating, and somewhere in the galaxy, peace was breaking out because humans had decided that babysitting was a valid form of diplomacy. Honestly, it was not the weirdest thing humans had ever done. But it might have been the most effective.